Okay, Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome. It is my honor and privilege to have with us Rabbi Levine, who is known many of his Sfarim that he wrote on the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and the Sfarim in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Many of us, when you're using the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Shabbos, we learn it with a lot of his extra comments that he writes. And so when we just finished learning Hilchos Burger, and we discussed that the Alter Rebbe said one thing in the Shulchan Aruch, another thing in the Siddur, and we want to know if you could, how do you deal with certain matters in Hilchos Burger. I thought I'm going to go straight to the top. The one and anything that's detailed, you got to go and really dissect the halacha. So I asked Rabbi Levine. Rabbi Levine doesn't need too many titles. He's known as the Rebbe's librarian. He wrote many Sfarim, a big Chacham. And hopefully by the time we finish this year, we'll master, at least in general, Hilchos Burger. Now I don't know if everybody, in our group, the Shabbos group got Rabbi Levine's handout. I don't know if it came out to every group, but whoever has it, if you want to print it out, print it out. If not, you'll listen to Rabbi Levine. Rabbi Levine, floor is yours.
The basic rules of the melacha of Beira, the Alter Rebbe is explaining in the beginning of Siman Shin Yud Tes by saying there are two kinds of Beira. One is Beira psoiles mitoich eichel. When you have a mixture of eichel and psoiles, you take out the psoiles, it's Beira minatero. In any case you do this, it's osur and chayev. The second kind of bearer is when you're taking out the eichel and you leave the psoiles. This kind, sometimes it's osur minatero and sometimes it is mutar. When is it osur minatero? Why is it different? Because when you have a mixture of oichel and psoiles and you take the oichel, you're not boirer. You're just eating like this. It's derech achille. You take the food and you eat it. You're not separating them. If you take out the psoiles, that means you're separating them. But if you take out the oichel to eat, it's derech achille. So therefore it's not beira, but it has two tnoim when you could take out the oichel mitoich psoiles. One tnai is you should take it with your hands, not with a special kli that is made for that. If you take it out with a special kli, it's not called derech achille. You're not eating, you're separating, because you're separating it with a special kele. The second rule is that you have to do it before you eat, not 2 hours earlier. If you take out the food from the oichel from the psoiles 2 hours earlier and 2 hours later you are going to eat it, it's not derech achille. You're separating them in order to be able to eat it 2 hours later. So there is two rules, two tnoim in this heter. In order to be able to do it, you have to do it with your hands and you have to eat it right away within the hour or so.
Today when people eat with forks and spoons, it changes?
No, we're speaking about a kele that is made to separate, not made to eat. And as we will soon discuss, the cases that you do it. And you are still chayiv because you're doing it in a way that it is a kele made to separate eichel from psoiles. Let's see how the Alter Rebbe is explaining it in the beginning of Siman Shin Yud Tes. He says, a boirer hu me'ovis meloches, שכן במשכון היו בררים הפסלס מן הסממונים. לפיכך, כל הבוירר פסולס מתירו היכל, אפילו בידי יחס, אפילו כדי לאכל לאלתר, חייב. Even though it's not with the kele, even though you're eating it right away, but still when you take out the pseles, it's considered separating. It's not considered derech achile. Aval ha-boirer oichel mitera pseles, you take out the food. If you take it k'dei le'echel la'alter, eine chayev. Ellen kein berer benapoi bikvoro shekein derer breirosei. They are special kelim to separate. But if you eat it with your hands and you take out the echel meter pseles to eat it right away, then it's called derech achile. Im berer echel biyodei כדי לאכל לאלתר, מותר, מפני שנטיל לעשות איכל מתיר הפסלס, כדי לאכל מיד, אין זה מעין מלאכה כלל, שדרך אכילה כך היא. שהרי אי אפשר לאכל האכל, או איכל עם הפסלס. So if you want to eat, you take out the איכל. ולעשו תירו אלו לעשייסן בכלי המיוחד לכך, דהיינו נפו וכבורו. What is napo? What is kvara? We'll discuss soon. That's the rules of Berer. And now we'll go to Hilchas Rabsel Shabbat in the Siddur. That there are two paragraphs related to Berer. And we have to understand that, and we'll see what it says first. First case is, I have it plate of soup that a fly fell in. Ve'im nofal zvuv a sharp seles le kois elikeoro. I have a cup of tea and something fell into it. I want to take it out. I don't want to drink it. So the only way to do it, he says, ein takone rak lishpech ma'akois. I spill out the fly or the pseles from the cup or from the plate. And you could do it. Why? שכיוון שנפילס הפסלס לחוץ הוא על ידי שאיכס ביודי הקייס עם המשקה שבתיכי ומתיו ביודי הרי זה ניקו Berer, eichel mit der pseles, mutter k'dei lishtis miyad. Since you're now in the middle of eating the soup from the plate or the tea from the cup, and something fell in there, so you spill it out, it's considered eichel mit der pseles. And therefore you could. We have to understand why it is oichel meter pseles. If you have a cup that something fell into it and you want to spill it out, and you spill it out, so you're taking out the pseles from the oichel. If you have a fly fell into your plate of soup and you spill out the fly from the soup, you're taking out the pseles from the eichel. So why are you allowed to do it? And this explains because it's considered eichel mit pseles. Why is it considered eichel mit pseles? Because what you have in your hand, the plate or the cup, you're taking it out. You spill out the fly and you stay in your hands with the soup or with the tea. So even though you're throwing out the fly, it is considered oichel mit pseles. You're threw out the fly, and you take your plate of the soup. So it's considered oichel miter pseles. But why is it called like that? When you spill it out, it should be considered like you spill out the fly or the other pseles, and then it stays in your hand, the eichel. So why shouldn't this be considered as boirer pseles mit der eichel? Then it's not allowed to. So in order to understand when you spill out from a cup or from a plate is considered pseles mit der eichel, and when it is considered like eichel mit der pseles, we will see again what the Alter Rebbe explains in the first sif of Siman Shin Yotes. We will see what he explains in other sifim, and we will try to understand when it is considered oichel mit der pseles and when it's considered pseles mit der eichel. So when it says in the beginning of Sin Yotes what is considered oichel mit der pseles and it's not allowed to because it's a kele, so he says two kelim. Napo.
Can I just summarize what you just said for a minute? You said that one of the smartest, that even though you poured out the bug, but because what's left in your hand is the soup, that might be still considered oichel mit der pseles. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So even though you tilted the bug out,
yes,
what's in your hand is left the soup, it still could be considered maybe oichel mit der pseles.
Correct. And we will explain what the rules, when you consider it like that and when not. So let's start with the first sif. He said, oichel mit der pseles, if you do with the kele, it's also, even though it's oichel mit der pseles. And he gives some examples. One is napo and one is kvoro. Let's see what is napo and what is kvoro. Napo is when you have flour. When you make the flour, in the flour is mixed in some of the pills of the wheat called murson or subin. And how you get it clean? You put everything in a zip and you zip it out so the kemach, the flour, goes through and falls into a pot under it. And what stays in your hand? The pills, the muson or the subin. And he says it's considered oichel mit der pseles. And the only reason why it's also is because it's a kele that is made for that. Otherwise you would be able to do it because it's oichel mit der pseles, which means that the oichel goes through the sip into the kele, and what stays in your hand is the pseles. So it's called oichel mit der pseles. Not like we said before, when you spill out from the plate, what you spill out is spill out, and what's you left in your hand is called that you're taking it. So both are called oichel mit der pseles. By the flour, it's oichel mit der pseles because the oichel you put into a kele, and what's left in your hand is just left over. And by a fly, you say it's oichel mit der pseles because what you take out from the plate is left over, and what you take in your plate, that's what you're taking. So how does these two things combine? So he gives another sample in the first seif. Napo and kvoro. What means kvoro? Kvoro is being explained more specifically in Siman Shin Chov Dalet. When you make dosh, and you take out the ga'inim of the wheat, and you make from it flour, so the straws that stay there is food for the Balechayim, for the behemoths. They eat it. But they can't eat everything, because there is the moitz, which is what's growing in top of the wheat. They can't eat it. So you want to separate, give them only the teven, not the moitz. How do you divide the moitz from the teven? The moitz is very small, thin, like hair. And the teven is large. So you take it in, you put it into a sip with larger holes. So all the moitz is passing by. Staying in the sip is the teven, which is large. And you're not allowed to do it because it's a special kele. Kvoro is made for that. Otherwise it would be muter, because it's oichel mitoich psoilis. Why is it oichel mitoich psoilis? Because the oichel stays in your hands and the psoilis goes away. So how come Napo and Kvoro both are considered oichel mitoich psoilis? It's the opposite. But Napo, the flour goes through and the psoilis stays in your hands. But Kvoro, the moitz goes through and the teven, which is the oichel, stays in your hand. And they are both considered oichel mitoich psoilis. So I understand it like this. When you have flour and you sip it, so the flour goes into a kele. So when it goes into a kele, that's what you put there. But the moitz, you don't put it in a kele. It's garbage. You just sip it and throw it out. So what you do is you hold with your hands the oichel, the teven, and whatever is the moitz is garbage and going through, not going to a kele, goes under the ground. So then it's called oichel mitoich psoilis, what you hold in your hand, not what's going in garbage. But by the flour, it's going in a kele. So what's going in a kele, you put it into a kele, that's what you put there. So it's oichel mitoich psoilis.
Rabbi Levine, I know that in Shmer Shabbos Melchasa, there's a discussion if you could use a peeler for carrots.
We'll discuss it in the second half.
But now you're bringing out...
No, peeling is the second half, which is a separate subject. That's the second paragraph of the Hilchos Rapsel Shabbat. Now you were just trying to say, how come in these two cases it's considered oichel mitoich psoilis, and therefore we understand also what it says in Hilchos Rapsel Shabbat, when you get the fly out, you're not getting the fly in a kele, you don't need the fly, you just get it out. What stays in your hands? The soup. That's the oichel. So you're taking it. Whatever is going to garbage, you're not taking it. It's going away. That's my understanding of it, and we will try to see several more seifim in Shinyutes how it works. Let's go in Shinyutes to Seif Yudches. when you have wine that has a lot of shmorim in the wine, and you want to separate them, so you need a sip. But in the beginning, when there is, the shmorim are in the bottom of the bottle, and the top of the bottle of the kele is wine, and it's not completely mixed. So when you want to drink, you spill from the bottle into a cup, and goes into the cup only wine, not the shmorim, because you didn't get so low yet. So you're allowed to do it. Why? Because you are taking eichel mitech pseles. You spill into a cup the wine that you want to drink. That's eichel mitech pseles. You're not spilling out the wine in the garbage, you spill it into a cup. So let's see how the Rabbi explains it in Sif Yud Ches. Muter laris benachas mikli lechaverei כדי שהפסלס והשמורים משוער ובשולי הכלי שהאימותו ליברי איכל אימש כמתיר הפסלס כשרצה לא אוכלל שתי סלאלתר כל שאין ברר על ידי כלי. Here you spill it out with a kli, but it's not sipping, it's not a sip, you just spill it out with your hands. כאן אף שמערה מכלי לכלי מכל מקום עיקר הברר נעשה על ידי יודוב ואיני חושב ברר בכלי, אלא כשמסנן בסודר, כפיפו וכייצא בזה. So you see again, since the wine goes into a cup, you're taking the wine out of what's left. So therefore it's considered eichel meter pseles. When will it be considered pseles meter eichel? So let's go in next Sif, in Sif Yud Tes. In Sif Yud Tes is when you fry it with oil, French fry or whatever. After you finish, you want to take out only what you eat. So what do? You take the frying pan, you spill out the oil into another kele for tomorrow, and then what's left in the frying pan is the food. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Why? Because it's boyer pseles mitoich eichel. Why is it considered pseles mitoich eichel? What you left in your hand is the eichel. But when you throw it out from the frying pan into another kele, you want to use it. You want to fry with it tomorrow again. So you're not throwing it out. You're throwing it in. So you're throwing in the pseles. Why? Because you're not eating today the oil. You're eating today only the potatoes, the potato chips. So that's the eichel. And when you throw it out to another kele, you're throwing out the eichel because whatever you don't think you want to eat now is considered pseles. So you're putting in the pseles into a kele. So then it's considered pseles with a eichel. Let's see how he explains it in Sif Yud Tes. אבל שובן הצוף על גבי התבשיל, אוסו להרוי סיכולי. אפילו כדי לאיכל התבשיל לאלתר, מפני שהן שני מיני איכלים. איזה המין שאיכל לאלתר נקרא איכל. The potato chips is called eichel. השני, the oil, is considered pseles. וכשמערה השומן שאין האיכרץ הלכל, how is it better pseles with the eichel? Because you're putting it to a kele for tomorrow. Let's go now to Sif Chov Beis. When they make cheese, it separates the milk into two parts. The good part of the milk becomes cheese, becomes solid, and the water of it, which is called kum, is water, and you throw it out. So when you want to eat the cheese, you spill out the water and you leave in your kele the cheese. When you spill it out in a kele, no, you don't need it anymore. So you spill it out in the sink. So what would this be considered? Pseles met de egel, of egel met de pseles? Since you're not putting into a kele that you need it for later, you just spill it out. So you better what you left in your kele from the kum, from the water. So it's considered, let's see how he says it in Sif Chof Hei. Im nosan akum beteich kli gami, you put it into a special zip. Mea cholov neitfim im tege. They go out. Har je tut das berg egel mit der pseles. Why? Because what's going out is not going into a kele. It's going out. It's garbage. And what you have left in your kele is what you think, what you need. So it's berg egel mit der pseles, but you're not allowed to. Because this kele that you put it into is a special sip for the kum to go out and the cheese to stay. So it's like alidei napo kvaro v'chayov. It's egel mit der pseles, because whatever is going out goes to the garbage. You're not putting it into a kele, and what you left in your house, in your hands, is what you're taking. So it's egel mit der pseles, but you're not allowed to, because you do it with a special kele which is made for that. So if it's egel mit der pseles al di napo kvaro, you're chayev. So that's why when you spill out the fly from the soup, it's called egel mit der pseles, and you're allowed to. Others are discussing that it doesn't fit with what it says in Shulchan Aruch, in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and they try to find the reasons why he changed his mind. But the way we explained it, the way they understand it, is everything in Simen, in Shin Yud Sif Aleph, and in Sif Yud Ches, and Sif Yud Tes, and Sif Chof Hei, and in the Hilchos Rab Shel Shabbato, is all the same rule as we explained it now. Let's go now to the second part of the Haloch Hilchos Rab Shel Shabbato, which is also related to Beir. And this is...
Rabbi, you wanted to ask something about the shulem. You also want, before we move over to the next thing, you want to ask something?
Yeah. So in the Sif Yud Tes, it doesn't seem to say anything about that you're pouring it into a keli, but that's the way that you explained it, and it's, I understand.
He doesn't say it. He says that you need the shulem for later, and that's why it is considered pseles, because you don't need it for now. Eise amin she'egel alter nikro egel, ve'ashen nikro pseles. So the shulem is called pseles because you're not eating it now, but you eat it later. You need the pseles for later. That's why it's called pseles. So obviously, if you need it for later, you're not throwing it out.
So when I read this, if I understood that it was, you could have been putting it directly into the sink there.
So then you don't have to explain it that it's considered pseles because you need it for later. He says what you need now is oichel. What you need later is pseles. If you need later, means that you put it into a kele that you need later.
Okay. Okay.
That's my understanding of this halacha.
Can I ask a question also?
Yes.
Earlier in the year, you mentioned about la'alter, about doing something right away. Why is it not considered if a person goes to shul in the morning?
So I didn't go into that because we didn't learn that. But he explains it in the beginning of Shin Yotes that the time that people are starting to go out of shul and coming home, then the lady in the house, when she knows that now they're getting soon home, so when they prepare to go home, it's considered la'alter. But if they are still davening and they're still not preparing themselves to go home, it's not called la'alter because you're not eating it now. That's what he explains in Shin Yotes. But we didn't go into that because that's not our topic today.
Okay. No, why not have, if let's say I don't have time, the student is supposed to start, let's say, right away after davening, let's say. So I'm just not understanding, why not say that the time before davening is called la'alter? It's the only time I have time, let's say, to prepare before the meal that was called for, let's say, 11 o'clock, I don't know, whatever.
Okay, but when you're still davening and you prepare it, it's not derech achila. You're not eating it now. You're not preparing now to eat now. You're davening now. When you finish davening, you go home. So that's why it's not called derech achila. You're not eating it now. Derech achila is now. And what is the timetable? So I mentioned before, like 1 hour. Because since you finish davening, you prepare to go home, and then you go home, you say Shalom Aleichem, and then you say Kiddush. So that's considered like an hour is about what it's the time. But there is...
During the shir, somebody asked me, what if somebody has a lot of guests? Moshe Rabbi has to make for a lot of people.
I don't know what to tell you, because when you do for a lot of people, it's not always considered derech achila. I don't know. The Fregarov, and he will say how to do it. It's not always you have to do it like that. There are some things that you have to do la'alter, and those things that you do la'alter, there is a problem. Not only beira, there is more things. Teichen is also la'alter, and so it's always a question when you make the salat. If you make it thin salat, so question you have to do it only la'alter. But that's not our subject today. We will go now to the second paragraph in the Siddur, which also needs explanation, and there is a machlekes in there how to explain the Alter Rebbe. Let's start what he says. He says, better don't eat nuts on Shabbos. Because when you eat nuts and you break it, so it mixes the shells of the nuts and the food of the nuts. And then if you want to separate it, natural, you separate, you take out the shells and you put it on the side. So that's considered pseles b'tech eichel, and your iver avere, and also muktzeh, so therefore try not to eat it Shabbos unless you broke it open before Shabbos and you took away the shells before Shabbos. But then he says that the problem of bear is if you break it and they are already separated but they are mixed in. But if, as usually when you open the nuts with a nut opener, it breaks into 2 or 3 pieces, and each piece has the nut in it. You still didn't separate them. So he says if you didn't separate it yet and you take out the shells, it's not considered beira, and you could do it. The reason why I say you shouldn't do it on Shabbos, because maybe it will separate and would be mixed, and you would take out the shells. So then it's considered berer, pseles mit der Regel. But if in every shell there is still a piece of food, and you take out the shell, it's not considered berer, pseles mit der Regel. Why? You take out the shell, so you take out the pseles, and we get to the fact that Rabbi Willem mentioned before. You peel bananas or oranges, so what you peel out is you take away the pseles. What is left you're going to eat. But now you're taking away the pseles. So why could we peel bananas or oranges on Shabbos? He says only the nuts we shouldn't do it. But other food, other fruit we could peel. Why? So let's see, there is a Yerushalmi that says that you're not allowed to peel on food on Shabbos. He speaks about shumim. Kad mivchar beklipaisu, sheneitelese me'aklipis, chayev mishum berer. Because you take out the pseles and you leave the food. So how do we peel food on Shabbos? So there is two shittas. One shitta is the Rosh and the Marshal. Let's see what the Rosh says. He doesn't pass like the Yerushalmi, because in Talmud Bavli it doesn't mention that. So he says you're allowed to do it. Why are you allowed to? So he explains that when you have food in a pill, the pill is oichel. They're not separated yet. So it's all oichel. When you have an orange, you don't have a pill and the fruit. It's all one. When you take it out, you take out oichel, moichel. It's not considered berer, pseles mit der Regel. That's what the Rosh says. He says, nearly, the gezim ubotnim shenishberu umonochim adayim bikliposom, like the case of the Alter Rebbe, loy mikre she pseles alayhu, kiven du chayu bochi v'havi shoymer lepri, so it's oichel. Lidomi latzomis uklipim, when you eat fish, you take out the tzomis, or clippers that are already taken out, but they are mixed. That's what the Rosh says. There is still room to argue what it exactly means. But the Yamshishleim explains it more. The Marshal in Yamshishleim explains it more. Min echod hu, ve'ein shum pseres olof, be'eze inyan shemetakin oichel matir hashemer, you're not taking away pseles, because it's only one fruit and it's called all eichel. That's the shitta of the Marshal and the Rosh that hold we do not pass like the Yerushalmi.
Where's this Rosh?
What?
Where's the Rosh?
If you have the page, it says in Beitze, Perek Aleph, Simen Chov Gimel. The Yamshishleim is in Beitze, Perek Aleph, Simen Mem Beis. But the Ramot doesn't paskin like them. He paskins like their Yerushalmi. So why do we peel fruit? So the Ramot says in Simen Shimchov Aleph in Shabbos, Sif Yotes, Osu likleif shumim upsolim kshekoilef lehaniach אבל תחילה אלתר שורי. He says that yes, the Yerushalmi says it's also when you're not eating it right away. You peel it up because in 2 hours from now you want to eat it. So it's considered oichel metech pseles. Oichel metech pseles? You're not touching the oichel, you just take out the pills. Sure, you take out the pills. When it's mixed and you take out the food, so it's oichel metech pseles. When you take out the pills, pseles metech oichel. But now you cannot come to the food unless you take away the pseles. So right, you could say you're taking away the pseles, but it's derech achila. You can't eat any other way. So even if it's pseles metech oichel, it's considered oichel metech pseles because it's derech achila. So therefore, you are allowed to do it if you eat it right away. That's what he speaks about garlic and onions. Says the Mogen Avrom, it's not only that, im kein af tapuchim osur liklis laniach. If you eat the apple, you want to peel it up, it's considered oichel metech pseles. Because you cannot come to the apple itself if you don't want to eat the pills. So it's derech achila. So it's derech achila, it's allowed if you eat it right away. But if you want to peel apples in order that later, a few hours later, you'll have guests and you want to give them, it's not la'alter, it's not derech achila. But it's considered oichel metech pseles. So now the Rabbi explains in Siman Tov Kuf Yud that here the Ramah and the Mogen Avrom hold that we pasken like the Yerushalmi. And the Yerushalmi meire she oisel lehoniach. And therefore the Yerushalmi says that you're chayev. אבל כשכלב לחם לאלתר, מותר אף לברר הפסלס כמי שכלב הקליפות, because it's derech achila. These are the two shittas. So according to one shitta, the Rosh and the Marshal, you're allowed to peel oranges if you're going to serve it 3 hours from now. Because it's not oichel pseles, it's all oichel. But the Ramah and the Mogen Avrom and the Ali Rabo say that if you peel, it's considered derech achila. But if you leave it for late, it's oichel pseles, but it's derech achila. If you don't want to eat it now, you want to eat it in a few hours later, you're not allowed to. If you want to eat it now, you could peel it. Let's see now how the Alter Rebbe paskens in Shulchan Aruch and how he paskens in the Siddur. In Shulchan Aruch and Siman Shin Yutes, Seif Tes, he says, Mutor likleif tvuo mine kitnis שנמללו מהשרביטים והשרביטים מערב שבס, רק שיזוהר שלאיקליף אלו מה שצורך לאכל לאלתר ולקדל לאכל לאחר שעה. Why? Because when you take off the pills, it's called derech achila. That's the heter. And derech achila you are allowed only when you eat right away. But if you eat later, you can't. Now we'll come to the din of the nuts. That you bring the nuts, and the nuts are still in the pills, in the shells. So we said before that the Rosh says that a gezim ubotnim shenishtabru Umunochim adayin bikliposom, you are allowed to take the shells. Why? The Rosh says because it's not boirer, because it is still in it, so it's all the considered food, all considered oichel. So you could do it even if you don't want to eat it now, if you want to eat it later. But the Alter Rebbe, let's see what the Alter Rebbe says. He says in Hilchos Rapsel Shabbat, in the next paragraph, Toiv limnoya melacha legezim veluzim b'Shabbos, elo im kein o hitzio mikliposom erev Shabbos. Ki hine af she be'oit she'apri munar b'kliposei, kulei miktsosei, mutar lahater kliposei b'yodei. Like the Rosh says, but he says, tut noim. Only with your hands. And it's not considered boirer psoiles b'yoichel. He doesn't say it's not considered boirer. It's not considered boirer mitoich eichel. Why? Because it's derech achilosei. So it's considered like eichel mitoich psoiles. So therefore, you are allowed to do it with your hands. If it's right away. You shouldn't do it because later it mixes in, it separates and mixes, and you'll take it and you'll be Ever and Beira. So in Pashtas, the Alter Rebbe says here, like the Ramo and the Mogen Avrom and the Ani Rabbi, that it's not pseles mitech eichel. It's considered like eichel mitech pseles, and therefore you are allowed to only be yodei. Not with the kele. But the Tzemach Tzedek is still, that's how the Alter Rebbe explains, and that's why Reb Chaim Noy, Tzitz HaShulchan, he explains it like that. Shari Admur kosav muter laosir klipose biyodei, vein b'mishum beira, umevuar derak biyad muter laosir klipo, avol b'kli osur, ומוכר דשייר בזניה בר וההתר הוא רק סמוך לסעודו על כוחו דמה שהיתר אדמור היינו בסמוך לסעודו ואף על פי דאבי פסלס באיכל מקום כמותר דקנו דרך אכילה ואפשר בדרך אחר. So he's passing like the Ramo, not like the Marshal. But the Tzemach Tzedek is still thinking if it's possible that the Alter Rebbe holds like the Rosh and the Marshal. The Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek in Piskei Dinim says, Ein mashikosev besidur gabe egezim beit she'apri chulu muter laoser kliposei liche'ere zeu al pi das rashal biyam sheshleime. So why shall we say that the Alter Rebbe holds like the Rashal and not like the Ramo and the Taz and the Mogen Avrom? So he is questioning. The Tzitz HaShulchan says that from what he says biyodei is Muchar that he holds like the Ramo and Mogen Avrom. And what is it Negeya Lemaisa? It's Negeya Lemaisa, the Tzemach Tzedek says, when you eat fish on Shabbos, there is the atzomis in the fish. So there is big atzomis, and you have the small, thin atzomis. Like when you eat a herring, you have the small, thin atzomes in the herring. When you want to take out the atzomes of the herring, according to the Marshal, you could take it out. The wife doesn't want that the husband and the children should have, when they eat the herring, they should have to pull out the small atzomis. It's a whole uncomfortable task. So she does it in the morning. Says the Marshal, you could do it. Because as long they are still together, it's not considered klipis. It's considered food. So you take it out. But according to the Magen Avram and the Ramo, you are allowed to do it because it's derech achila. Because you can't eat it with this together. So you are allowed to do it only before you eat, while eating. But you're not allowed to do it 2 hours earlier. So says the Tzemach Tzedek, לפי זה צורך עיון באיכל דוגים ויש עצוmis קטנים בתיכון. The big one you could take out the food. This small one you cannot take out the food from this small thin atzomis. You have to take out the atzomis, which is pseles mitechechel. But since derech achilosa, you're allowed to. But if it's not considered as pseles, im mutter lahatir atzomis, larashal yishlem adashari. Venir lahakel, that you could do it. He is more native to say that you could do it. So the difference is, according to that, you could take out the small, thin atzomes from the herring, and 2 hours earlier. But according to what the Tzeitzah Shulchan explains in the Alter Rebbe, then you could still take it out, but only while they are coming from shul and preparing themselves to eat.
So in what way is that atzomis different than watermelon seeds? Watermelon seeds, you definitely can't do it early, but could you do it sama plasuda?
That's also the same thing, is that like the shells of the gezim and like the thin atzomis of the herring.
You could do it before the suda?
Before, according to the Rashal, you could, and according to Ramo, you could do it only close to the Suda.
Yeah, but you don't have to put it in your mouth and spit it out.
Who says that you should put it in? We discussed that derech achila means taking it away before you put it into the mouth.
Okay, but aren't people machmer, they don't take it out? They don't take it
It's not, because in the watermelon, there is not a problem. Even if you eat in the middle of the week, you're going to eat it together and then take out the garinim. And the same thing is also by when you eat grapes and it has little garinim, you take it out in your mouth and then you take it out. Much easier than taking it out. But
halacha megmarishem, you can take it out before.
But it's hard.
Huh?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yes, lichaira you could.
Hard makes it even a bigger problem.
Lichaira you could. Because it's like pills. You can't take out the food from there. You could only take out that from the food. So it's considered, if while you eat, it's considered derech achilas.
So some double, you said now, the peeler for an apple.
The peeler for an apple is also negaya to that. According to the Ramo, you're not allowed to use a pillar for an apple on Shabbos, because the pillar is a kli amiyurad lekach, and you are doing it only derech achila. When you peel it with a pillar, it's not called derech achila. But if you peel it with a knife, it's not made for that, so then you could probably could. But according to Rashal, you could even do it with a pillar, because it's not considered pseles. So what's the problem?
It's like cutting an apple in 4 pieces. Make the shell up, mask the side.
Yeah.
Okay, because alle brengen das door 2 Schichten. Magnum und Prima ist natürlich.
Die 2 Schichten sind die 2 Schichten zwischen dem Marschall mit dem Ramo.
Shulem, do you want to ask a question? Because I want to try to corner Rabbi. Oh, give me a minute. Let me try to corner. If they supposed to have coffee presses, they're Yisrael, they can call not that Yisrael, but today everybody filtered water and then they make press. Forget about the visual part. We stoop there up the coffee, not the smart, the coffee whatever. On top is the box.
The beans, is it from beans or from...
The beans are tegen, and after it's stochen.
Brown. The beans are brown. The lake, you put water, forget about the beans.
Go through a filter.
It's like, the village that the schmutz,
Is it going to help? There is nothing to talk about, because this kele is like an apple kvoro. Even if it's considered egel metir pseles, der gachile, but when it's a kele that is made for that, you're not allowed to do it anyways.
It makes what the Velzog, stupid is it up all the way down. Lots of ice, the Veltish of
I don't know.
You know where else? What was the other thing? What was the other thing? We had what was the other one? The other issue with that one about the
Turkish coffee.
The French press. The French press. That's what they do. Forget it. There's also
the water pitcher with the filter.
It's not mentioned. They only do water out of a filter pitcher.
It's another subject, has nothing to do with what we're discussing today, but when it says in Shulchan Aruch that if you could drink it with...
Why is that not better? Why is it...
That's what it explains in Shinyates. If you could drink it without separating, then you could separate, because you're just making it better. But if you cannot drink it without, then you're separating, you're not allowed to. So therefore they said, those people that don't drink water because there are little objects inside and they don't want to drink it because it's surim or whatever, they are not allowed to separate it. But if you don't care and you just want it better, then you could separate it. That's another subject, has nothing to do with what we are discussing today.
Shulem, I'll get you ask.
Okay, I had a question about if you say it's derech achila to eat a fruit or anything like that, based on the fact that the only way to get to the eichel is by taking out or removing the masalik, that peel or whatever. So if let's say you have a bowl of lettuce and on top, the whole bowl of lettuce is covered on top with like bad lettuce, and the only way to get to the good lettuce is on the bottom. The Shulchan Aruch Rav doesn't seem to mention that.
Right, it doesn't mention that. It mentions only if there's mixed, there is part like this and part like that. If you take it, you can't take it out. But if you could come to the inside only when you take off the bottom, the top, it's like the pills.
So that would be mutter.
If you have to come there in order, if you have to take it off in order to get to the inside. Yes.
Alma, you want to add something?
Yeah, my question was regarding the apple peeler. If it is, even though it's a kli meyuchad, isn't it still eifel metech eifel? And because the
according to the Ramo, it's not egel metech egel. It's egel pseles metech egel der chachilosei. But der chachilosei doesn't help when you do it with a kele that is made for that. Because it's not considered that when you do it with a special kele that is made for that, it's not called der chachila. You're not eating. You're just doing it with a special kele. So that's why banapo kvoro, when you have the same thing, you want to eat only the inside, but you do it with the napo kvoro. It's not considered der chachila because it's a kele that is made for that.
My question is about the status of the peel. The status of the peel is considered psilus? Why?
It's considered psilus because you don't want to eat it. But it's considered derech hilosei because you want to be able to come to the food.
Right. So when it comes to a min echad, even if one is a chefet.
If it's min echad, which means the cheat of the rashal, then you could do it the pila too, because it's not considered boira. But according to the Ramah, that it is considered boira, but it's derech hilosei, So derech hachilosei, if it's a kela that is made for that, is not considered derech hachilosei.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, just a general question about later. After you eat on Shabbos and you want to clean the table, so how does it work? You have, let's say dishes and forks, and then you have the garbage and the plates. And you want to, or let's say you have paper plates and you have forks.
Obviously, it is not part of Siman Shin Yotes and of Berer. But in general, there is two kinds of pills or leftover. There is leftover that you could eat, which is not muktzeh.
That's muktzeh. He's going.
No, I'm asking about boiler became like
why boiler? Everything that stays there goes into garbage. You want.
Let's say I have paper plates and I have forks like silverware, and I want to put the forks in the sink, and I'm putting the plates in the garbage with the garbage. How do you do it in a way that's not boiler? Like,
I don't know what to tell you, and there is more questions like that. Let me ask you a much simpler question. The davening shul comes to Kriyas Torah, you give them out chumoshim.
Yeah.
After Kriyas Torah, you take away all the chumoshim, you put them on the place, and they are stayed with the sidurim. By kelim, it's the same thing. So the sidurim are called like egel. And the chumoshim, since you need it for next week, it's considered like pselis. And you're taking away all the chumoshim, you put it in on the place. So it's the chaire, it's pselis and the regel. So some are medayek not to do it. But some see, not better, I'm just taking the chumoshim, putting it on the place. So all these things is not a clear, there is no clear understanding of that.
That's not a tarubis, it's not mu'urim. The whole virus mentions submit.
Okay, on the table lays sidurim and chumoshim.
Okay. But what's the difference? See the Shavel. They all eat semichkes of Shabbos.
There is no problem in semichkes, because semichkes you eat with your mouth the food and you throw away the others. You're not separating them. You're not taking away the shells after they are mixed. It's not muktzeh because when you put it into your mouth, it's not muktzeh yet. And after that, it's left in your mouth, in your hand. When it's left in your hand, you're allowed to. It becomes muktzeh and you still have it in your hands, you're allowed to keep it in your hands till you put it away.
Yeah, but they make piles on the table, spices on the dish. Dort nicht in Muktzeh. Dort nicht in
Muktzeh, und dort nicht der Heter, wie bald sich Peichts in them, that's why it's considered Grafshel Rei. But by shells of nuts, it's not with your Peichts, so it's not considered. That's why it says in Shulchan Aruch, in Shin Chesif Samach, that the shells of the nuts you're not allowed to take off the table. Only with special ways, but it's not simple. So even if you eat that, that's what the Alter Rebbe says, that the nuts is considered muktzeh, because it stays on the table and you can't take it off. Only if you take the whole tishtach with some of it is food. It's a whole complicated subject, and that's why it's also a problem also by the night seder. When you peel the eggs, each one has its egg. So the eggs, the peel of the eggs is not considered food. It's not like the orange pills. And there's a problem of taking it off the table. And when you start eating, you want to take off this eggs shells. So it's a problem. When I do it in my house, they bring the garbage can near the table. Each one is peeling the egg and throwing the peels direct into the garbage can. But you don't leave it on the table because otherwise there will be a problem with it. But that's already dealing in muktzah, not in beira.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to, what's the ma'asim with arbus?
That's not for today.
Okay, but I'll never put it in the same,
There's two paragraphs, each one speaks about another subject, and the arbus is a complicated subject. It's not on one hand.
Okay. Anybody else before Rabbi? It's overtime. Anybody else? Michelle?
Yeah, I want to ask about the melacha that we were talking about.
Melilas I'm not going to touch today. The subject of Melilas is a complicated subject and a separate subject, and we're not going to touch it today.
Okay. What about the nuts?
What?
The nuts, where it says it has 3 shells. And
Breaking the nuts is the part of dosh, not of part of beira, which is a separate subject.
Yeah, when you mentioned about oranges and bananas, so you said it's derech achila to peel them because it's impossible to eat them otherwise. You could eat them otherwise. You could cut the orange with the peel on it into a few sections, and you could eat the inside out.
But when you peel it, it's derech achilose, because you want to get, without cutting it, you want to get to the fruit, and that's derech achilose. That's what the Magen Avraham says. Mishum be'im kein af tapuchim osur likleif la'aniach. But if you want to eat it now, it's derech achilose. Even though you could theoretically cut it in pieces and eat it in a different way.
Okay. Okay, thank you very, very much. I'm sure this helped us out a lot. And